think that's him. Lyle? You all set?
I'm here.
Okay, great. I'm going to call the meeting to order, the Town of New Paltz Planning Board, April 26th, 2021. We have minutes from April 12th. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Have a second?
Second.
Any discussion on the minutes? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, great. Okay, is there anyone here for public comment? Alana, did you say someone was going to speak for public comment?
Yeah, Kenji's here.
Okay.
Hi.
Hey, how are you? Oh, there you are. I see your hand up now.
Hi. I attempted to raise my hand. Can I go ahead?
Yes, please.
Okay. I'm here representing the Environmental Conservation Board. My name is Roderick Kenji Tierney. I'm a member. So I'd like to read a letter that has been submitted by ENCB. So I'll just read it. Dear Chair Ruger and members of the Town of New Paltz Planning Board, Town of New Paltz Environmental Conservation Board, ENCB members Ingrid Heckel and Jonathan Schwartz participated in April 11th, 2021 site visit of the proposed subdivision at 525 Albany Post Road. This memo summarizes our field observations and ENCB's recommendations. The building site is proposed in the middle of a 6-acre shrubland young forest habitat adjoining a 640-acre Stony Kill Woods forest area. Shrubland and young forests are early successional habitats that provide abundant cover and food sources for many species of wildlife. These early successional habitats have significantly declined across the Northeast as many areas of former farmland have reverted to mature forests, leading to declining populations of previously common species. The New York State Wildlife Action Plan identifies many shrublands and young forest species among the listed Species of Greatest Conservation Need, SGCN, which are species that are experiencing some level of population decline in New York, have identified threats that may put them in jeopardy, and need conservation action to maintain stable population levels or sustain recovery. DEC's 2019 Habitat Summary Report for New Paltz identifies 13 SGCN species, birds and reptiles, associated with shrublands and young forest habitats in New Paltz, including American woodcock, which we believe to have observed during the site visit. In addition to wildlife value, the rapid vegetation growth in young forests is associated with higher rates of carbon sequestration per area relative to mature forests. We recommend conservation of the shrubland habitat to the greatest extent possible. Near the middle of the shrubland, we observed a small wetland with saturated soils, pockets of standing water, and wetland vegetation, including sedges and beard tongue. In addition, a small drainage is present, possibly a remnant agricultural ditch. The drainage has some standing water, but was not flowing at the time of the visit. We recommend that the wetland inspector visit the site to determine whether these features fall under the jurisdiction of Chapter 139. The town open space plan recommends the use of quote unquote conservation design in new subdivisions in the Butterfield Canaan foothill area. From a conservation standpoint, we recommend locating the proposed house in what is currently the pasture, perhaps near the pasture shrubland edge, to minimize habitat loss and fragmentation. We believe this could be done while minimizing scenic impacts from the road, as the property owner has artfully demonstrated with the primary residence. While this option might reduce or eliminate potential agricultural use of the pasture field, there is no guarantee that future owners of the property will wish to continue any agricultural activity. As added benefit of a smaller disturbance footprints may be avoided, avoidance of the requirement for SWPPP. Alternatively, locating the house closer to the pasture border within the shrubland might still permit some preservation of the shrubland. Thank you for your time and consideration of our recommendations for the proposed 2-lot subdivision of 525 Albany Post Road. We also thank Mr. Albrecht for his time leading the site visit and for answering our questions. Sincerely, Ingrid Heckel.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here for public comment? I'm gonna try and pay better attention to hands up. No, so we're gonna close public comment. Okay, so our application review tonight is 525 Albany Post Road. And I'm gonna let Andy take over for now because you have filled out, we haven't gone over this form yet. Maybe we can do that tonight.
Okay, you want to go over the part 2?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Okay, so I think everybody's pretty familiar by now, or most of us, with those 11 questions in the short form. I just put in what my suggested answer, but feel free to interrupt and discuss as I go. First question is, will the project proposed action create a material conflict with an adopted land use plan or zoning regulations? I would say no, because it meets zoning. Will the proposed action result in a change in the use or intensity of use of land? I would say no or small. So the first check is no or small impact. Will the proposed action impair the character or quality of the existing community? I would say no or small. Will the proposed action have an impact on the environmental characteristics that cause the establishment of CEA? Not yet. We don't have any CEAs in New Paltz. Will the proposed action result in an adverse change in the existing level of traffic or affect existing infrastructure or mass transit, biking, or walkway? No. Will the proposed action cause an increase in the use of energy as it fails to incorporate reasonable available energy conservation or renewable energy opportunities? No or small. Proposed action impact water or sewer? No, they're both small private systems. Proposed action impair the character or quality of important historical, archaeological, architectural, or aesthetic resources. I believe they obtained, it was archaeologically sensitive, so they got the letter that said that this project does not impact from in that way from SHPA. So I would say no or small. Will proposed action result in an average change in natural resources, wetlands, water bodies, groundwater, air quality, flora, or fauna? I would say no to small, but there's been, we have the NCB letter. The wetlands inspector did go to the site and say that the project does not impact any wetlands or their buffers. Will proposed action result in an increase in the potential for erosion, flooding, or drainage problems? No or small. They've prepared a stormwater pollution prevention plan to handle erosion, and it's a relatively small project. Will proposed action create a hazard to environmental resources or human health? No.
Okay, any discussion on what Andy just presented? Okay, Rick, our next step is to, oh, I can't hear you. Sorry.
Take a hard look at those issues and then make your determination of significance as either a positive declaration, a negative declaration, or postpone that so that you can have more information to try to make that determination.
I'm sorry, but I missed your very beginning of what you were saying.
Sure. At this point in time, the board needs to take a hard look at all those questions that were posed in the SEAF Part 2 and make one of those three determinations, either a positive declaration because it may have a significant impact on the environment, negative declaration because it will not have a significant adverse environmental impact on the environment, or 3, to postpone the determination of significance as you do with expanded part 3s, where you want more information such as studies or analysis or whatever to see if it could arrive at a negative declaration without an EIS.
Can we make a motion and then discuss it?
Yes?
Okay, so I'd like to make a motion to declare a negative declaration. Have a second? Lyle will second. Is there any discussion on that?
I guess I'm just a little confused because the ENCB felt that there, if they made some adjustments, that there would be, minimal to no impact, but if they didn't, there would be some impact on some fairly sensitive, I don't know, environmental area.
I think, I don't know,
Yeah.
Adele, if I could speak, I believe we did a site visit. We had our wetland inspector there. We paid for his professional opinion. I believe that the NCB certainly has a right to make recommendations, and they would probably recommend no building at all. But the person has a property, he has an envelope to build in. I don't think he wants to build in a wetland. There's no wetland shown, no wetland indicated except way down in the back. I think we've taken a good hard look at this.
I'm sorry, Lau, but I don't think we were discussing wetlands. They were discussing the emergent, what Kenji just described was not a wetland. What he was describing was a habitat that was not anything to do with the wetland. And that was something that I think, do we need to ask him to read it again so we all understand what they were saying?
No, we knew what the habitat was. It's growing back from being cleared as an agricultural field. That, and I get it, but there's a lot of it there. And the site of a house is not going to destroy that. There's 6 acres there.
Well, their proposal was that it be considered in the already cleared area, so just to not impact it. That's all.
If I could make a suggestion, because it will impact your decision-making. One is whether or not the applicant is asking to have location of the residence, the location of the sewer, and the location of the septic approved as part of this subdivision approval, or whether or not that was just proving that it was a buildable lot and no such approvals will be done and only the lot changes of the subdivision will be approved.
So that was actually my understanding, because I think when we spoke to Mr. Albrecht, he wasn't sure if the house was going to be a little here or a little there. So he wasn't giving us an exact location. And my understanding was that we were going to approve a bare lot showing that it was able to be built on. I don't know, Mr. James?
Well, I think it's up to Mark to decide where he wants to site the house, and it was his wish that the house be sited as I've shown it. Mark, if you want to jump in.
I think after, correct me if I'm wrong, I think after he gets his subdivision, he can work on where the house is going to be, which is a different, I think, Rick said, than having to site the house now.
That's great, but that will never come back to the planning board.
No, but what this board could do is if he's saying part of this approval, and you have a right to ask for this as part of subdivision, is that included in that subdivision is essentially a site plan acceptance as well. You have the right to ask for that as an applicant. So you can say, I want the subdivision approved as well as the location of the home, well, septic, those things. Or he could just say, I'm just showing these things to show that it's a buildable lot, but all I want you to do is just recognize a change in lot lines for this property. which is what I call a bare subdivision. And then the applicant would come back at a future date and deal with the building inspector as to where is a good location. Now, with respect to the ENCB letter and its potential impact on location of the home and well and septic, this board could approve even a bare subdivision that said, however, with condition saying that it's not, you cannot place a home in a certain area, the ENCB shrub area, if that's what you wanted to do. Or you could say nothing if you didn't think it was a significant adverse environmental impact, and you could just allow it to be placed anywhere on the site up to the building inspector, who may inform her decision by basis of the ENCB comment. I don't know, but certainly it's a different process and it would not come back to the planning board again. So you could sort of dictate where this house is going to go, even by a bare subdivision, because that's part of your environmental review. Or you could not have any restrictions on the location of the future home.
Is there anything in between where we can just ask them to take it into account? You know, I mean, clearly she's got some good points, but you know, I mean, I don't think we should. Yeah, I doubt that as a group we would find that this is significant impact such that we would, you know, require it to be moved to a different place. But I think it should be definitely taken seriously into consideration. You know, if there's no like hard and fast reason for one or the other, that this be part of the consideration that's made. I don't know how we do that.
Well, it's not enforceable that way, but
Yeah.
you could always ask somebody to do anything, but it
Okay,
wouldn't
hold
be
on
an
one.
enforceable condition.
I'm just gonna hear from Matt first.
I'm trying to understand, Rick, what you're saying. Like, he's only asking for a subdivision. He's only asking to divide his property. He's
Well,
not asking
I
to
don't
build
really
a
know that
house.
yet. I don't know that yet, Matt. I haven't heard from the applicant if that's what he's asking for. He has a lot of detail in there, which normally isn't given unless you're also asking the board to approve the location of the home. But
Right. But the application is for a subdivision.
yeah, but
Not
when you
right?
have when you ask for a subdivision approval, you are allowed to include within that the location and other aspects of site plan. It doesn't have to be called and site plan approval. The state law says that subdivision approval can include the typical site plan aspects that would go along with it. And many times that's what happens. You have a 10-lot subdivision. You want approvals for where those houses and driveways are going to go for your 10-lot subdivision. So you do site plan at the same time that you do the subdivision, but you're not required to do that. We just haven't heard yet from the applicant which one he is asking for.
All right. And can I ask one more follow-up question? Andy, in regard to the ENCB comments, are there any rules about building in a shrubland like this? Like, are there rules that are in the code that are preventing him from putting the house where he wants?
Not that I'm aware of. Usually things like species and habitat are, you know, addressed by, you know, DEC when the bald eagle came up and the bird, the grebe. But no, I'm not. There's nothing in the code that protects, that to my knowledge, that protects this kind of habitat.
And I think that's correct, Matt. What this issue comes up with is on the short form environmental assessment form, part 2, number 9. Whether or not the proposed action will result in an adverse change to natural resources such as the shrubland.
Okay.
Hey, Mark, I'm sorry. You ready?
So I have a few things I'd like to share. You know, I think we need to have balance in what's going on here and take into consideration the whole. While I respect the suggestions of the ENCB, when this was first subdivided almost 20 years ago, my wife and I were proponents of limiting the development on the property. Now that afforded us our privacy and a big open space, but that also afforded New Paltz open space. We participated in that. We invested in that. We paid for that. So it was known that at that time we could build a house on that lot, which I understand we're just debating where the house will go. What the ENCB does not take into consideration is that it's a 19-acre land, and we're going to disturb 2.5 acres to build a driveway and a house. I think that proportion is extremely generous to the environment, because we're all acknowledging we live here and we're going to build houses. This is, we're not all going to live in a tree house together. So while we're going to build a house, we have a field in the front. My wife and I were very deliberate in letting the field overgrow in the back because there was some wildlife there. We've been in touch with that wildlife there. Now we need and want to build a house there. So while, yes, the NCB suggests I put it in the pasture in the front, pasture in the back. So, take it into consideration that there's a balance. The most balanced approach is to put the house back there. It's where I want it for design purposes, but it also affords balance to the environment, because if we put it up front, I now have a rental agreement with a farmer who gets the pasture in the back, and he's going to clear that back and put his cows back there. So would you rather 2 open fields, or would you rather 1 open field with some shrubs around and some overgrowth in the house, and, with a little yard? I mean, I think it's getting to the point where I came with a very sound proposal, a well-balanced proposal. I'm not asking for the moon, but I feel like there's a lot of pushback, and the NCB at the site visit, she said, well, it's just a suggestion. The wetlands inspector went out there. He clearly stated and signed off that it's not a wetlands. Now, there are puddles. There is a drainage ditch that's agricultural. So, I urge you to just have some balance with your review of this and acceptance of, I have an idea where I want to design and build the house, where it should go. If we start inspecting and opening up a little bit, we're like, okay, maybe it should go a little bit further forward. Maybe that makes more sense. I appreciate that, and I would take all this into consideration. But I think there has to be some trust. I think I've demonstrated that in the 19 years I've been a resident in New Paltz, and what I've done with my property and the minimal interference with it. I think if we don't have trust that I've done that so far, what else can I do? I mean, I walked the walk, I didn't just talk it, and now I'm asking to continue. And yes, the application, I've invested in a site plan and everything. I would like approval at this point. We've gone this far to the process. For me, it would be backtracking if we're now just going to say it's a blank subdivision.
Okay, I mean, generally speaking, I could be wrong. I don't think you have to come back to us if it's a blank subdivision, though. You would just go to the building inspector. Is that right, Rick? I think so. I believe so.
Oh, at one point I heard I had to come back.
I don't think so. So anyway, thank you, Mark, and everyone.
So I have just one more question.
Yes.
So Mark, does that mean that you're not intending to sell the new lot because you're going to continue with the rental for the farmer? So
I can't promise that. I don't know what will happen, but we're going to do something. And the farmer has a lease on the land for 5 years. So, and he started a year ago. So he has 4 more years.
And then this is a part I've never quite understood. So you would actually own both houses. You would own 2 lots with different houses.
No, I don't know what the future will bring, but I need flexibility in my life, and I have the right to have that flexibility.
Yeah, I totally agree. I'm sort of envisioning a impromptu another subdivision in a way. So
excuse me, we can't subdivide again. It's in the original deed with the property that we can.
There's a restriction on the original subdivision map.
And just to be clear, so I demonstrate my actions, I pushed for that. I pushed for self-restriction. like understand that, please understand that, like deeply, that my wife and I went to the planning board 20 years ago and we wanted that and we insisted on that, and our neighbors.
Okay, so thank you for clarifying that, and please understand we are only, I was only trying to make sure that whatever the ENCB's suggestion was understood as to why they felt, that there could be some alternate way to think about where the house went, but clearly that's nothing I think that we are going to force on you, and so it's going to be at your discretion, and just read their memo and understand it, that's all.
I appreciate that. Thank you. And I will, and I do consider it.
Thank you.
Okay, so can we call the question on the negative declaration? All in favor of a negative declaration for this subdivision? Say aye.
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 That's 1, 2, 3, 4. All opposed? Abstain?
Who's-
Amanda, I don't see you.
I know, I'm very torn about this one, but I feel like abstaining is I don't want to say a bad word, but a poopy way to do that. So I don't want to abstain either. So no, whatever. Yeah, fine. I'm for it. Go ahead.
Okay, so I think we can now set a public hearing, right?
Yeah. Yes, you can set a public hearing. Andy, I think we'll all look to you to see whether or not all the details are shown on this subdivision plat that are required by the code for, I think what they're asking for, and they can correct me if I'm wrong, is both preliminary and final subdivision is one approval process rather than trying to get a preliminary approval and then come back at some future time for a final approval. And if I'm correct that they want both preliminary and final at the same time, Andy will have to look at the plans, look at the code, and determine what elements are missing. And the applicant has the ability to request waiver of those requirements as to what's missing that they're not really needed.
That's pretty much done already. I did go through it, and it's a detailed plan, and whatever's not on there, they did provide a list of waivers. But I'll double check before the public hearing and make sure there's anything else.
Matt?
Andy, you said list of waivers. I only saw like one. Am I missing something? It was on the original application, no? In the letter that they sent?
Yeah, Bob, right? You put it in your cover letter?
There was another narrative that listed all the waivers.
Yeah, I only saw, I was looking at that. I only saw the one. Maybe I'm just not looking carefully enough.
Yeah, there was a whole list of waivers.
Might be their second submission, Matt.
Oh,
Yes.
okay. I'm sorry. I didn't see that one. My bad. I'll get back to you. Thank you.
Okay. So as far as dates for the public hearing, Alana?
Yes, so you could do the first May meeting, which is the 10th, but you would have to mail and post your signs by this Friday because it has to be 10 days. So that's a little bit of a crunch. So if you think you have the time, we could set it for that, or you could just do the fourth meeting, which is the 24th. So either of those are the meetings in May. I don't know which one the applicant prefers.
What exactly does the applicant have to do besides post the public hearing?
You're just going to post a sign that you get from PDQ that says there's a public hearing, and it goes the front of your property. And then I provide you with the neighbors within 500 feet, and I give you the notice. And then you just have to mail those out. And then you sign an affidavit that says that you mailed the signs out and posted them within the 10 days.
Is that required to be certified, Alana?
Not necessarily. It's not required. I've had people do it, and I don't discourage them from doing it if they're already doing it. But I don't believe it's like required in the code or anything that it has to be certified. And then I notice the paper. You don't have to do that.
Mark, if that's something you can handle, the paperwork end of it, it'll take it off my plate because,
And I'll send everything to you tomorrow. I usually do it the next morning.
And Alana, I'm sorry, the sign would have to be posted and the letters mailed by this Friday?
Yeah, because it has to be 10 days.
I think
So
we
I-
can do that.
Do you think you can do it? It's up to you.
I do. Yes.
Will it get posted, will it get printed in the, what's the deadline for the paper?
So I would email them on the 3rd and it would be in the Wednesday issue. So it would be in the 5th of the New Paltz Times.
Just realize that if you're unable to make those commitments by that time frame, they would then have to set a new public hearing at the next meeting. That's the reason that you have to be very certain that you're going to do it. Otherwise, you're going to lose more than a month.
Oh, I didn't realize that. So if I don't get the sign printed by the end of the week,
And the
That's-
notice is out.
the notices seem, I mean, if I receive it tomorrow from Alana, I can mail it tomorrow. But the sign printing is out of my control a bit. So if I don't have that sign on my property by Friday,
Well, PDQ does, so they're in the checklist that explains to you how to do everything. PDQ in the Taps Shopping Center is used to this. They're like used to people asking for this stuff. So they're pretty quick. I've never heard anything from anyone that says that, it takes them days to print this up for you.
and it's just one sign that posts at the front of my property.
Yeah, and it says like there's an application for review in front of the town planning board, and I think there's a phone number on it, and then people can go on the website and look at the application materials and all that stuff.
It has to be of a certain size though, right, Alana?
Yeah, and PDQ knows what the size of it, and it has the measurements on the checklist, and it's that kind of thing.
And does the sign go on the half where the current dwelling is, or does it go on because we're dividing down the middle, does it go on
Yeah.
in front of the half of the lot that's being subdivided off?
I would say the spot that makes the most logical sense that people would see it. Like, I know there's a rule that if your house is on a corner lot, you have to put it on both street facing
It's
sides. So it's kind of a common sense thing. Like, if you put it somewhere no one's gonna see it, then that's probably not a good spot. But if you put it somewhere, like if someone's jogging or driving by and they can easily see it, that's where you would put it. Some
Okay.
people elect, like, they go above and beyond and they just get two and they put it in two different spots, but that's not necessarily required. I think only one is technically required.
Okay. Yes, as long as I get the information tomorrow, I can make it happen by Friday.
Okay, thank you. Very good.
Thank you.
And thank you. Anything else we need to do tonight? I want to thank the ENCB and Mark, I'm sure if you need to reach out to them for anything, I'm sure somebody will be able to help answer any questions that you might have.
I just have one final question. Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt, but will you be looking for health department approval prior to subdivision approval?
I don't know, Rick, will we?
No, we don't need it. Department of Health approval on something like this is not needed before the subdivision approval. Things like that are typically a condition in the resolution saying that they must obtain Department of Health approval if it's required. I just don't know whether or not it's required in many jurisdictions. It's the local engineer that watches the tests for small lots, and the Department of Health usually doesn't get involved, I think, in 5 lots or more. But Andy would know better than I.
And you just clarify that for me, would you?
I don't believe it's required because it's because of the size of the lot, and I don't think the health department requires it for this type of subdivision. So I don't think we need to require it if they don't want to. It expires in 2 years. So say he subdivides and doesn't want to build
That's
a house
true.
for 5 years.
That's true. Normally, in every other situation I've ever been in, they want to see a permit to construct, the board. And if it goes in 2 years, then you got to re-up it for $400. But if you don't need it, then we won't do it.
Well, it'll be a condition of your approval to have any Department of Health approval that is required.
At what point do I need the approval? Health
Wouldn't that
department.
be when we go to get it?
Typically, it's a condition, meaning that you have to get it before a building permit.
Okay, but I can file the map.
Sometimes the board on smaller lots, much smaller lots, or where Andy would indicate that, say, perk is questionable, then they may require it before giving an approval. But this is a decent sized lot. I'll obviously defer to Andy, but I can't imagine you couldn't get perk someplace on that property.
Right. So if this was a 1 acre lot, then we would say, yeah, you need to show that you can actually do this. Because it's 19 acres, there's really no risk of not getting it. So I think the condition prior to a building permit on the lot is the right way to do it for this subdivision.
Okay. Thank you.
Adele?
Yes.
I don't think you took a vote on setting the public hearing.
Okay. So, and then what's that date? The
So
10th?
May 10th, yeah.
Okay. I have a motion to set a public hearing for May 10th for the Albany Post, 525 Albany Post Road subdivision.
So moved.
Okay, do I have a
Second.
second? Matt, thanks. Any discussion?
Do you need to check for quorum?
We have 1, 2, 3, 4.
No, not here, that day.
For the next meeting? Well, anybody here not able to make it on the 10th?
That's why I asked. I'm not.
Okay, so we're 4, so I think we'll have it.
And then hopefully Jane and or Amy will be here, so it should be fine.
Okay, okay,
The other thing I just want to mention is that, as Andy said, he believes, except for the requested waivers, that the plat contains all the necessary information required by the code. Therefore, at the next for approval or at the time of approval, the board is going to have to agree to waive all of those aspects that are being requested to be waived. So everybody should just look at that and see if they have any objections to granting such a waiver, because that will have to be done before your final vote on the approval.
And the only thing I would add to that is the list looks kind of long and scary. I think a lot of the things on there I would have said are not applicable instead of needing a waiver. So I think you can go either way. So just noting that it looks like a long list, but I think a lot of that stuff just doesn't really apply to this property.
okay,
Just need an all in favor on the public hearing.
yes, yep. I'm just waiting to see if anyone else is saying anything. We're good? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Jennifer, didn't see.
I was on mute. Aye.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see you. Okay. Okay, unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we're set. Ready to adjourn? Rick, you think?
Yeah, I don't have anything else.
Okay, motion to adjourn?
But-
Wait.
Up.
Alana, I don't see the second application.
You mean their second
all the-
division?
No, the list of waivers. I'm looking at the one that says subdivision application. Is there another one?
I mean, all I have is the application folder with all the materials in it. I can send it to you again.
No, I'll look through it again. I just don't see. I don't know why I don't see it, but I'll look at it before the next meeting. No, I'll let you know if I can't find it.
Oh yeah, okay, that's fine.
Thank you.
Okay, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Right.